I had to prove I could knit to get on my flight. Let's talk about it. Hi everyone, my name is Erin and I am a knitter, and I recently got back from a 6-week trip abroad in Europe, and I was coming back from the Manchester airport and I had the strangest thing happen to me. I had to prove I could knit to get through security. So weird. So you always hear horror stories of people losing their knitting needles on insecurity. And I was always like, well, it says in the rules that you can bring knitting needles on. No problem, I'm gonna bring my needles. And because I was there for 6 weeks, I had like all of my needles, like the whole shebang, just sitting in my backpack, all stacked up. We've got crochet hooks, we've got everything you could possibly need. There's scissors in here, there's pins, there's many sharp objects. And when I went to Manchester Airport, first off, it was a bit of a nightmare. I get to Manchester Airport after being on a train for 2 hours. I was coming from Leeds, where I was at a medieval conference, where I actually met Sophie, the knit Purl girl, which is absolutely amazing. She is a fantastic human. If you don't follow her, I will put her details below. But I was extremely tired and I had food poisoning, which kind of destroyed my esophagus. And I had like no voice. And so I was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna think I'm really sick. More on that later. And so I arrived to the Manchester airport 3 hours early as recommended, and the lines were pretty ridiculous. So one of the airlines was having a major problem and they were lining people up in the parking garage. And as someone who frequents travel TikTok, I was like, oh no, this is going to be the nightmare that I keep on seeing online of people unable to get through security, missing their flights. And I was like, I can't miss a flight. It's an 8-hour flight to Toronto. Like, what am I gonna do? It's the only flight that goes out to Toronto from Manchester Airport today. It's not like I'm at like a major hub where I can just jump on another flight. Thankfully, it was only, I think, Turkish Airlines that was having a problem, but I had to prove that I was flying Air Transat to even get into the building, because the other people, they were lining up in the parking garage. It was very strange. I wait in line at the Air Transat because I am not a British citizen. They made me show my pass to be able to get a physical ticket. And I found this a lot in Europe, is that if you weren't an EU or UK citizen, you had to get a physical boarding pass. You couldn't just use your phone, which I found very strange, because in most of the North American airports, you can either use your phone or you just check in on a kiosk and you go right in. But I had to wait in the line. Fine, I wasn't checking any bags, because if you're familiar with Pearson Airport, it has been a flippin' nightmare lately, and I was like, I'm not risking that. Go through security. I've got a carry-on bag and a Herschel backpack, and in my Herschel backpack, I have all of my needles and a knitting project sitting in the top, ready for a full flight of knitting. And I go through security and they are yelling at us about liquids. And I was like, I did not put my liquids in a plastic bag. I have just been on 4, 5, 6, many international flights, and my liquids have never been a problem. They're just like mascara and things. And so I was like, I might get pulled into secondary, but if I do, like, I know I'm way under the limit, and they didn't have plastic bags to give out. So I was like, I don't know, doing the best I can. So naturally, my backpack gets pulled into secondary. So I have my suitcase, I'm holding my laptop because they make you take that out, and I'm just like clutching my laptop with my suitcase. And Manchester Airport is the most like security heavy, not security heavy. They were the most sticklers about liquids I've ever seen. I was waiting for my bag for about a half hour, and I saw only 2 people go through security without getting their bag pulled into secondary. They were pulling over everyone into secondary. It was wild. And they were pulling people over and like searching for like a single Vaseline little doohickey. Like, it was insane. So I was just like listening in, as you do at the airport. I watched this poor woman. She had bought a gift set of these beautiful creams and lotions and body wash for her grandmother. Didn't think of the fact that they were liquid, and I watched her as she got the whole gift set taken away. She couldn't bring it onto the flight, and I felt so bad for her, but she didn't have a bag in which she could check it because she had just gotten it as a gift. on the way to the airport, which is just, it was so sad to watch because it looked like a beautiful set. I'm sure her grandmother would have loved it. But anyways, so I'm watching all these people go through, and then they call me up. They like hold up my backpack above their head and they're like, whose is this? And I say, that's my backpack. I go, and he's like, you need to open the zips. And there was no room in front of me to put down my laptop. So I'm awkwardly opening the zips of my laptop with one hand, which is harder than it sounds. And I was like, you can open them if you want. And he's like, no, 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 I need you to open them. And I was like, okay. And I'm not going to attempt to do the Manchester accent, by the way, because I will not do it justice, but just imagine like an extremely heavy Manchester accent this man with this whole transaction. And so he starts asking me about everything in my bag. He starts just pocket by pocket, and I've never seen anyone do this before. Usually if they pull you in a secondary, they find what they need to find. They look at it, they acknowledge it, and then they put it back, or they throw it out, or whatever they need to do. This man removes every single item from my backpack. I've never seen anyone do that before. He starts just front pocket, middle pocket, and my backpack is stuffed full. I've just come back from 6 weeks abroad. I have souvenirs, I have yarn, I have books. I was just at a medieval conference, as I said, so I have many books. And so he starts just pulling things out and being like, what's this? What's this? What's this? And it's things like headphones. I'm like, they're headphones. And he's like, And I'm like, He gets to the main pocket, and at the top of the main pocket, there is this tote bag, which I am using as a project bag. And I like using tote bags as project bags when knitting because I can pull my project out and use it as a shopping bag if I need to. So that's a fun hack. So he pulls out this bag and he's like, what is this? And I'm like, it's my knitting. And he pulls it out and he holds it up like this. And I'm like, he's gonna lose my stitches. And he's like rummaging through it. And then he pulls out the needles and he holds it up like this. He's like, what is this? And I was like, it's my knitting. I don't know what to tell you, dude. And he's like, he shakes his head. He shoves my project back in the bag, puts it in the tub that the backpack's sitting in, and just walks away with my whole backpack, with my knitting project and everything. And so I'm just standing there like, okay. And then things start running through my head like, oh my gosh, all the horror stories. He's gonna take away my needles. What am I gonna do? Like, I guess I'll put stoppers on it. And the funny thing is that he had removed this, all my needles from the backpack already, and just shoved it aside and didn't open the pouch, which I thought was very strange, especially because afterwards I asked him what he was looking for, and he was looking for a tub of Vaseline is what threw the thing off. Does this not look like a makeup pouch if you don't know any better? I don't know, but I was like, thankfully he hasn't looked in there, because if he's horrified by these knitting needles, he's gonna be like aghast by the amount of needles I have sitting in my pouch. So I was like, okay, try to calm down, try to calm down. He comes back with his supervisor and they said, we're gonna have to pull you aside. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is not looking good. I look at my watch, I've got like 2 hours before my flight, and I'm like, okay, I have some time to spend in security if I need to. They pull me aside and he like throws me my knitting. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, we're gonna need you to knit. Excuse me? He's like, we're gonna need to know that you can use these for you to bring them onto the plane. And I say, and the supervisor's just like nodding, like, yes, yes, yes. And I'm just looking at him and I'm like, you want me to knit? And he said, yeah, you need to knit a whole row. And like, I mean, it's not like a row is huge, but like you'd think you'd get the idea with like a few stitches. So I take it and I'm like looking up at him, and I'll grab my yarn. I like take a moment and I'm like, oh, I must look so crazy because all the yarn is like tangled around it because of the way that he's jostled it. And so I'm just like trying to fix it up so I can actually start knitting on the thing, and they're just looking at me so intensely. And so I do just a couple stitches. I'm just like awkward, and I'm standing too, and I don't ever knit standing, so I'm like awkwardly knitting on this thing. And I do like maybe 5 stitches, and I look up at them and they're just like staring intently, don't say a word. They're like squinting, making sure I can do this. And so I was like, okay. And then I kept going. and they, honest to God, just watched me as I knit a row. Both of them just staring intensely at my hands. They did not look me in the eyes the whole time that I was knitting. And I was just looking up, looking down, looking up, looking down. I was so confused and like flabbergasted. I was like, if this is what I need to do to go on the flight, you know, like you're at an airport and you're like, I'll do anything. Just let me through security. And so I knit my row and I kind of like hold it up to show them. And I was like, ah. And then the guy looks at his supervisor and his supervisor nods and says, thank you, walks away. The guy's like, okay, you can give it back to me now. So I hand him back the knitting. He puts it back in the bag, throws it aside, doesn't care. Never once opens this pouch. I was like, you're too thorough and you're not thorough enough, my dude, but I'm not gonna bring it up. And then he goes through my bag, pulls out the rest of everything in it. And I was like, at this point, I was like, can I help you find what you're looking for? And he's like, I'm looking for a tub of Vaseline, which is so funny because that's the same thing they pulled out of every other person's bag. So I don't know if they had like a tip about the Vaseline tubs or something, but I just use it on my leg. Like I got the rose tinted one. So I was like, oh, it's in the makeup bag. And I point to it and he's like, yeah, I'll find it. And I was like, oh, okay. So he then immediately goes in the makeup bag, finds the tub of Vaseline, and he's like, this should be in a Ziploc. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't have one. And he pulls out a Ziploc, and he's like, well, I do. And I was like, that's awesome. He puts it in the Ziploc bag. He finds like the mascara and the foundation. He puts those in the Ziploc bag. And there's like this much room at the top of the Ziploc bag. And he's like, you were close. And I was like, I don't think I was though. I didn't say that, but I was like, I don't think it was. And then he hands me the tub and he's like, you need to put the liquids in the plastic. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry. And he nods, walks away. And now I have a tub of all of my possessions out for the world to see, including my knitting, which I have proved I could knit to get on my flight. And so I went to the side and there was this lovely couple and they were like, we just witnessed that and that was weird. And I said, yes, it was. Yes, it was very strange. When they pulled me aside, by the way, it was in the same area as everyone else. It wasn't like in a private room, which I had thought I was going to. They just kind of wanted me off to the side so they could witness my beautiful knitting skills. And yeah, I cleaned everything up. I went into the airport, got on my flight, went home, immediately got COVID. And so if you can hear it in my voice, that's why my voice never recovered from the stomach flu. I was testing the whole time I was there, so I don't think it was COVID the whole time, but what do I get from my beautiful international flight? I get COVID. And so that's why this story, if you saw when I first posted about this on my Instagram, that's why it's a bit delayed. I have barely had a voice this past week, but I'm happy to be able to share it with you. So yeah, I mean, they didn't take away my needles. So if you are worried about knitting on an international trip, I've seen people suggest printing out the regulations about how you're allowed knitting needles or crochet hooks. I've seen people suggest wooden ones because they look less threatening. I don't know. I don't really use wooden needles. I've seen other people say like bring throwaway ones and like be prepared to get them taken away, like bring ones that you don't like most. But I mean, if you're going for 6 weeks and you're an avid knitter, you're gonna need your kit. And so I don't know what to recommend. I guess be ready to knit on the spot. Be ready to prove yourself to get on your flight. So I don't know. I don't have the answers for you, but please leave down below your craziest travel knitting stories because I would love to know if anyone else has had this incredibly strange experience. And yeah, I'm happy that I could prove myself to get on my flight. I really think that they should integrate that into the flights. Like you have to prove what you're gonna do on that flight. You gotta prove you can watch movies and you gotta prove you can Anyway, I'm going loopy. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye.